Hi, my name is Alex Williams, founder of the New Stack, and you are listening to the New Stack Analysts podcast. Each week, we discuss our latest data research and a topic related to app development and back-end services. I'd like to thank our sponsor, HP Helion, and the HP Helion Developer Platform. HP Helion is based on Cloud Foundry and integrated with the HP Helion Open Stack. It's an open, interoperable, polyglot platform that supports enhanced application development and portability across traditional private and public clouds. That's HP Helion Developer Network. Check it out at hphelion.com. Now let's get to the show.
Hey, Alex Williams here at the New Stack here at HP Discover with Bill Hilf of HP. We'll have Bill tell a little bit about himself and the event here in a minute. Also with Stephen O'Grady of RedMonk, who is here and will soon be joined by his colleague, Mr. James Governor. So I want to just hear from you, Bill, about your perspective on where you guys are in this kind of general market. I mean, it sounds like a very broad statement, but there's a lot of things that you guys are talking about. For instance, in the beginning of in the keynotes today, about composable architectures and this application-centric world you guys are seemingly really trying to be a part of, which is to me a little bit of a funny way to think about you guys, because I've been going to your events over the years and we never have heard this kind of discussion. So I'd love to get that perspective.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for having me, and I know we pulled this together yesterday via Twitter. So it's good to talk to you guys. Let me give a little context. So I've been at HP for literally 2 years this week. This is my 2-year anniversary, and have been leading the product management and our product strategy for our cloud initiative called Helion across the company. And prior to that, I worked at Microsoft and IBM, a bunch of other places. But a lot of my past, I'd say 5 years, has been almost exclusively with enterprise customers thinking about cloud computing. And so everything that I'll kind of talk about and everything that we do is informed from that. And so one of the areas that we focus heavily on is exactly where are our customers today, where are they going to be in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And I say our customers, here at Discover, as you've probably seen, there's a lot of different types of enterprise customers, right? And there's a huge event. These customers have kind of a mix of everything. And I'll tell it through a funny story. I was on a panel earlier this week, and a CIO came up and said, listen, I just came back from a cloud event where there was someone on the panel, another panel from Netflix, someone from Airbnb, and there's a Google guy, I think, and then a couple other vendors. And they were talking about microservices and DevOps and CI/CD and all these great things about future application development and new models and all of this. And afterwards, he came up, he's like, the funny thing is, I absolutely believe that's where we need to go. But the funny thing is, they never mentioned anything I actually have today.
Right.
They didn't mention Oracle. They didn't mention my SAP system. They didn't mention the Sybase database that actually I still use, even though you may think it's still like in a critical system for me. And so I am struggling with, how do I do the circuit breaker design pattern against a legacy system, just to use sort of one of the more interesting, Netflix-driven patterns. And that conundrum between the new and the old, or the traditional, or the existing, whatever you want to call it, is exactly what we are trying to solve for with HP and Helion. We're trying to help them bridge those environments together. We're not trying to build a platform only for cloud-native applications or only systems management tools for classic IT infrastructure, because we believe those customers are going to go stepwise on some sort of journey to a cloud architecture, whatever that may be. It could be a public cloud system. It could be a combination of different cloud systems. It could be just stuff that they build on their own. It could be outsourced. There's all kinds of variations on the cloud theme. But as they go through that, what they have today and what they're trying to get to tomorrow, they actually have to build that in a logical way and transition in a logical way. And sometimes it's not just lift and shift as an option. So the things that we've been doing here, what we've been announcing, and the tenets of our strategy are provide an environment that allows them to build true cloud native applications, which is why we've built this thing called the Helion Development Platform with Cloud Foundry at the base, so that someone can build apps in a modern way, but also give them the technologies that allow them to use, I think Gartner, I may be wrong, but I think Gartner coined the phrase, to get cloud inspired. I think that's the phrase they use. I just like the way it sounds. Where you can make some of your existing systems more cloud-like, and basically, usually what that means is adding some automation and some self-service around traditional applications and traditional VM infrastructures. And so we provide those types of tools as well, where someone can take apps as is, typical 3-tier app, web tier, Java app server, Oracle database, for example, and move those VMs as is into our cloud system product and put some self-service and automation around that existing application. It's not a microservice built application. It's not a moving to a true CI/CD model, but it gets them incrementally on that path and starts to get some value more short term from that. So that's where we focus, is hit them where their problems are today. Skate to where the puck is going, to use the Gretzky saying, but at the same time, don't skate out of the rink, right? Don't come at them and say, hey, we have the microservices platform for you. Like, awesome, what am I going to do with my SAP system? And so getting that balance right is really what we've been focused on.
Okay. So Stephen, are you hearing this term composable more often, and what is it meaning, do you think, what do you think it means now? I'm trying to find some context for the HP news today, because I'm hearing these terms a lot. Trying to think. I don't know if you're hearing it more from customers or not, or what is your context for this discussion that HP is having here at Discover?
Well, I think the one thing that we are seeing a lot more of, these days is essentially deconstruction of applications, deconstruction of infrastructure, right? Because, basically, if we reduce it to a simplistic, sort of level, the sort of old traditional model of scale up, was relatively simple. You had a machine or a small number of machines, everything, ran on a smaller number of machines, and everything was much more sort of constrained, from a physical architecture perspective. When we look now at the way that a lot of the big guys are building and sort of deploying and rolling out applications, it's basically this exploded, right? So in other words, it's not only scale out from a physical architecture perspective in terms of we take that one machine and blow it up into a bunch of different machines. We may be consuming services that come from a variety of providers. So when we think about composable, when we think about basically the way that applications are being built today, they are very much by their nature, essentially a sort of aggregation of different services and aggregation of different components in ways that they weren't fundamentally before.
Yeah.
The classic example I talked about, in this category is that if we think about, sort of mobile applications, right? This question always comes up. People want to talk about mobile backend as a service, which I think is just a horrendous term, but I think is sort of useful to illustrate this, where if you take an average mobile application and you sort of deconstruct it, what are we actually talking about? Right, we're basically talking in most cases about a wrapper around a bunch of services,
right? And
these services are going to come from a variety of different players, right? So in other words, you typically have identity. If you are a very large bank, for example, you're probably handling that yourself. If you are, somebody else, you're probably relying on identity from, for gaming, for example. You're going to get that from, Facebook or Twitter or Google or somebody else. Content is going to come from, maybe yourself and some other providers. Geo, very few people do their own geo services. So at the end of the day, when we look at, sort of, yes, the sort of, modern microservice-driven mobile architecture and so on, all the way back to, the infrastructure and the sort of legacy applications, if you will, that are being rolled out, to modern sort of public infrastructure, by their very nature, by the way that that you're essentially forced to deploy to these environments. They have to be composable. You can't just take this huge block, throw it somewhere else, and say, hey, this, now I'm in the cloud or now I'm in a modern environment. It's simply not the way that it works.
What were customers trying to do a few years ago when they were trying to get through this? I mean, because a lot of these startups that Meg mentioned, right? Are startups that have emerged in the past few years, but there's been a whole generation of startups too that have come out that have been building, coming out of these ideas with lots of funding, and trying to create their own particular value, building these different kinds of architectures. A lot on Amazon Web Services. How are customers responding to that then? If they weren't thinking about composable architectures, have we seen customers kind of like stall and then start up again? Or were they trying, or were they just not even ready back then to even start thinking about, how to really kind of create these more efficient modern applications?
Yeah, one just sort of reality that like if you go out of this room right now and just grab a random guy or a gal, it's likely that their title is something like VP of IT Infrastructure or Operations. And most of what they deal with is pretty old. So I met with a customer earlier today that is a large retailer. They have a 15-year-old warehouse management system, literally the system that pumps orders down from their e-commerce site through the warehouses. It's a third-party piece of software. The company that built it has gone out of business. They don't have access to the source code. They literally don't want to touch the server it runs on because they're so like talking to them about doing anything new with that, even putting APIs around it, terrifies them. So that's a lot of the reality of what these types of customers have. They have systems that, often called systems of record or whatever, that have just been around for a long time. So one of the ways to answer that question is sort of a different way to answer that is, so what happened with SOA? So when SOA came into the picture, so you had these kind of old school, client server, then free tier architectures. SOA came into the picture with this promise of saying, we're going to put service layers around these legacy systems to drive better access. And it's probably a much longer discussion about what happened to SOA. I have a bunch of personal opinions about it. I think what
there's James Governor.
It's Munches.
How you doing, man?
Good
to see you.
Hey, how are you?
Good. We're recording.
Awesome.
And I think what we're seeing now is not so much that SOA. It's not that SOA failed. It's just we're seeing a maturation of that idea. I think if anyone's to blame for SOA's, what happened to SOA, it's largely the vendors. The way the vendors overloaded it and turned into these monstrous application services.
Well, at that time it wasn't microservice; it was web service.
That's right.
Wasn't it?
That's right.
Well, that's when you get to the point where you have a bunch of different competing standards, and I love this example. There's a WS reliable messaging standard and a WS-reliable messaging standard, and those are two different standards, right? And there were literally dozens of these things. So that's the thing. People want to know, why SOA failed, versus basically the way that we're seeing services built out now. And I would completely agree with Bill. I mean, basically it came down to the vendors attempted to impose their will in the form of, from protocol all the way down to a protocol standpoint. The developer said, basically no. And we're left to basically sort of evolve a much, much simpler sort of approach.
That's not happening now. We're not seeing that now. Not at all. Do you think we're like free of that mistake that was made back in the
So you mean?
Yeah.
I would say that this story is still being written. I would say the over marketing that's happening for what's happening. How many times do you see the word DevOps or microservices slapped in front of something? Or containers. I think that's happening. I don't think the standards wars like what happened with SOA are happening the same way right now. I don't see that happening right now. But the amount of time, I remember the amount of time I personally invested way back when I worked at IBM in all of those different working groups and all that, just sitting there just banging my head going, we're not even helping developers here. We're helping all these other vendors to figure out how the hell we're going to work together. And so I don't see that happening the same way.
It was a career then, wasn't it?
Yeah. We had directors of, WS Star.
Yeah.
Like literally, that was her title at Microsoft. We had people like that. And if you're listening, God bless you. I hope you're doing great.
So James, what's your take on? We were talking about composable architectures, and it's going to. My concern is that these phrases do become very buzzy. But in terms of the context you see at HP compared to the other vendors, what do you see different about what you're seeing here, compared to the big players out there?
Wow, I didn't expect that question. I'm going to have to think on that. So what's different? Composability, okay, I'll tell you one big thing that is different from HP's position in this, market versus everyone else's, which is that, quite frankly, when it comes to market permission with developers, HP doesn't really have any. And you could say that's bad, but on the other hand, it's the opportunity. HP has not traditionally engaged with developers. They had clearly, load testing was a constituency that they were serving. Ops, different groups, but the developer themselves has not really been part of that HP world. It has been purchasing first IT. And so for HP to get a sense for that this world is changing and they need to move to adoption first IT and they need to be consuming these different pieces, I think is a big deal. I mean, when you've got because companies have shackles of success. You have revenue streams. It's like, well, we don't want to change this because we're making money from it. But I think the fact that they're saying, look, we need to help our customers change, we need to change, and quite frankly, there's all this cool open source stuff out there. Like, of course we have to embrace Jenkins. Of course we're going to have JUnit in here. Of course, if we're building an ALM toolchain, we need to be thinking about how we can import chef models. At the risk of, I think that's it has to be an opportunity. If there have been missteps before, but I think that HP has known about this for a couple of years. I clearly remember Jonathan Rendy, I think 3 or 4 years ago, saying there is a collision between Agile and ITIL in the marketplace. HP crushed it in the ITIL wave with Service Desk. No doubt about it. It was a huge market for them. It was great. They absolutely won the ITIL build-out. No question. I mean, okay, you had BMC and others in there. But we have moved on. HP's kind of responding to that. So, I don't know. Greenfield is an opportunity.
So
they don't. It's not like they don't have. They don't have a bunch of customers running WebLogic and WebSphere, right? So that's got to be something in their favor.
Yeah, they're happy about that. So on my question, I've been asking people this question a lot, which I think helps me understand where companies are. It's like, tell me about your own internal application development process right now. For instance,
it's 100% waterfall, right?
Water scrub fall.
Yeah,
that's the word Sam Ramji I use. I don't Sam didn't
Agile waterfall.
That's right.
So tell us about that. How has it changed in the past 6 months, or how is it changing over the next 6 months? Because that leads to lots of different kinds of organizational changes. Adrian Cockcroft basically he talks about this a lot. So if you're not having total kind of organizational mayhem, you're not doing DevOps, because it kind of should be changing.
I'll tell you a fun internal story about it. And
HP is organizational mayhem. Says Bill Hilf.
Can I please not have another goddamn headline that is horrible? Can I just please not have one of those? Just for today, maybe tomorrow. So there's a story that I've been talking about mayhem. So if you want to cause organizational mayhem, separate a company the size of HP. We're creating 2 Fortune 50 companies, right? So the toughest job, no joke, the toughest job in the company right now is to work in HP IT, because they have a hard deadline for when the systems have to be. I don't mean notionally, technically, auditably separated, so that we can close books in 2 different companies. So one thing that Meg did, which was phenomenal and terrifying at the same time, is she said, since we're going to have the opportunity to recreate IT systems for a Fortune 50 company, super rare to be able to do that, we're going to do that on Helion. So, all of a sudden, John Hinshaw, who's our CIO, turned like, "Are you ready for my requirements?" That we have for one of the largest IT organizations in the world. And I kind of paled at that and say, "Well, we're getting the installer better in OpenStack. Like we're really working hard at that." But it's a great, eating your own dog food or drinking your own champagne, whatever your metaphor. It's a great way to create a flywheel between us and the product groups and IT. So they are building the new systems and applications on Helion. And so one thing that's happened, and for those that are like further down the path in the DevOps world, this will be sort of like common sense. But for traditional enterprise, it was a big traditional enterprise IT is a big awakening. As they went through and looked at the total app portfolio, they started doing like tagging and assessing, okay, this app here is never going to be able to move. This app here we can refactor. This app here we can maybe extend a little bit, but don't touch it because it's brittle. Assessing the portfolio. This is what we do for all of our big customers, like Deutsche Bank and all these other big customers we work with. We do application assessment. As that process went through, the application architects started saying, there's a whole bunch of common functionality here. Like 6 of these apps go and try to search Salesforce and Workday and some other system for the same type of data. Let's factor that. And this is like basic software engineering factoring, right? Let's factor that out, build a microservice for it on Cloud Foundry, and let these other apps use it through an API. This sounds common sense, of course, for the digerati, right? But for our IT group, this was a huge thing. They're like, okay, so now we have not new apps, we have new services running in this new type of platform, and now we have to go work with these other apps to get them to use that. And then you have to go through like, how do you then slowly contract those old APIs over time, so people start essentially weaning them to the new APIs in the new services. So HPIT is going through that right now, and we have an app that we use. It's a really common app. It's not that sexy. It's called the People Finder. It's what we use. We have 300,000 plus people in HP, so like the People Finder is really, really important. Like you get to find people. So you're like, I'd look up your email address or your phone. That app was built on Helion in our PaaS platform with Cloud Foundry and rewritten in a way that all these other apps that totally have dependencies on it all across HP are now using a true microservice, right, in a new way. So it's small steps of how we're incrementally moving ourselves to a cloud native environment at the service level, though, not like trying to port
Never
apps.
Let a crisis go to waste.
That's right. I mean, it is.
And then
deadline,
what you go to your customers and you're like, well, shit, we have a bunch of scar tissue because we just did this. Want help?
Yeah. No, literally, the devs who have worked on this People Finder project internally, like we have them talking to customers all the time right now. Like, here's how we did it. Right? And it's not that we're demoing it right here, like in our cloud booth. The People Finder, like people walking by, like, your People Finder inside your company, that's your demo? Not some sentiment analysis thing or something, cool? Like, no, like how you look up a phone number. But the story is the most interesting aspect of it.
That sounds dangerously realistic, Bill.
There should be more slides, more PowerPoint.
Yeah, you need some machine learning in there.
More the drones, and that powers the drones.
Yeah, drones, there you go.
So we're doing a lot of this on our own, and it does help us tell the story. But in like full credit to Meg on this, like you can't do this stuff grounds up. Like, because at the end of the day, it would have been the fastest, easiest path to do it. And she said, we're going to have a new template for how we do this. We're going to get our company itself to this cloud native world, and here's a deadline, and you're going to do it. Now, it's not easy, and there's a whole bunch of things that are going wrong, and the feedback's coming hard and fast into our product teams. That's exactly the way that you want to do this. It's dog fooding.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This
intermission
is now closed. Please join us again tomorrow. The Discover Zone
This is awesome.
opens at 9 a.m.
Now let's take a quick break before we get back to the second half of the show.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, HP Helion. HP Helion Developer Platform is based on Cloud Foundry and integrated with HP Helion OpenStack. HP Helion Development Platform is an open, interoperable, polyglot platform that supports enhanced application development and portability across traditional, private, and public clouds. It It's hphelion.com. Check it out. Now let's get back to the show.
There, another microservice we just kicked off.
Oh, that's great.
That's great. So, how has that changed your, the way your teams are organized internally?
How many people did you have to fire to be able to make this change without the antibodies winning?
Well, so the again, tops down, it becomes a mandate, right? Like there's no choice, right? Like meetings before, which is like, hey, you should really use our Helion platform, went to, you'll be using this. Like you have all of one choice.
It's like the old Jeff Bezos memo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anybody who doesn't do this will be fired.
That's right. You will have APIs, and that's how you'll interact with other groups. So the organizational change is because of the separation. It's kind of it's a little different because we're having to create two IT organizations for both companies. So these new things are being organized in a new way. So we're not doing it tops down like everyone is a service team now, and you're doing full DevOps. Like we're not trying to do a wholesale change that way. But as we build new services, we're saying, okay, you are responsible end to end for that service, for writing the code, supporting it, carrying the pager or actually PagerDuty, and taking care of the infrastructure, dealing with outages. You take care of the whole thing. So we have service teams that are dedicated at that sort of component level for the new things. And then as we're basically slowly, you can call it boiling the frog, right? We're doing it a little bit at a time as we increase the heat. Now, interestingly, if I were to show you two org charts, our team, our cloud team, particularly our cloud team that runs our public cloud and our virtual private cloud, our hosted cloud environment, they look just like these new IT teams that are building these new services. Very similar structure. So one thing we show a lot to customers is our own org chart. Say, here's sort of that classic hierarchical model of VPs and directors and managers and kind of functional teams. Then here's our service teams that run our live services. So we're slowly getting there. A lot of questions we get, as you can imagine, we get actually more questions on how do I change culture and organization versus just how do I get tools and how do I do, like how does CF push really work? Like we get that occasionally, but people can, you can Google that, right? You usually don't need, but like, hey, help me with my org. I don't know how to get there. That's the larger question we're getting all the time now.
Which is good because services business needs a new raison d'etre because they're not making enough money. Digital transformation is
there's
business
a
process
ton there.
re-engineering.
There's a ton there.
We all need to do this stuff, and it's hard.
Well, you know how it works, right? You help at the right level in enterprise sales, right? If you influence and help at the right level in the organization, it opens up a ton more opportunities, right? If you're down in the trenches, I experienced with Microsoft, like you're selling piece parts down in the trenches, it's great, but it's transactional sale, like it's like a catalog sale. You go in and say, I'm going to help you think about the end-to-end IT transformation, which includes training, education, software, tools, servers, data center consolidation, virtual desktop, like the whole thing. The opportunity space is so much wider, and the relationship ends up being so much deeper, right? This is why when we announced these really large deals that are 5-10 year contracts that we have with like a Deutsche Bank or something, they're not buying one piece of our catalog, right? It's a long-term relationship that we have with them in multiple dimensions, including in some cases things like HP Finance, like how we do our financial services to help them from a procurement point of view, right? They're not terribly sexy things, but things that large customers care about, chief procurement officers care about. So that's why the things like culture transformation, org transformation for our services business are a huge opportunity, like tons of opportunities.
We all care about finance.
It's some way or another. Yeah.
Uber at the end of the day, it makes a monthly bill for all travel. Mm-hmm. That's finance.
Yeah.
If it's the same thing. Yeah. So it should be. Given your scale, of course, that's part of the thing. I gotta did you prod Bill on public cloud partners and what's going to happen there?
I thought we're going to leave that out.
Oh, is that the bit we're leaving out?
No, I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah. What dimension? Just public cloud in general?
Well, I mean, because originally we were going to do the big build out, and now there's been a little bit of a retrenchment. Let's do the higher value services. I mean, you're gonna be partnering with someone on some of that public cloud stuff, right?
Yeah, the best way to explain it, because clearly I can't explain it in the press. I mean, I clearly don't know how to do it in the press. I mean, that one is definitely evident. So let me kind of tell through it the story that a customer told me, which was very informative, not just to how we explain it, but like our strategy, our core strategy itself. I was in New York. It's like top 15 of our customers, and I was whiteboarding for like an hour on our strategy. And he said, Bill, why do you keep using language, words, and talking about these things about the public cloud, Amazon or Azure or Google, the large public cloud providers, when I as your customer, don't think of you in that space, that quadrant, so to speak. I think of you over here, which is when I think about my entire IT environment. He goes, probably you and probably like IBM. That's who I think. When I think about IT in general, I think about you over here. So why do you keep talking about these things over here when this customer uses a lot of AWS? Because I use AWS, but it's only part of what I do. It's no more important to me than Cisco or Oracle or SAP or these other pieces that provide a set of services of functionality. It's like your opportunity is the entire end-to-end IT space for us. That's what you can address with your services, your software, your hardware, the whole picture of HP, and particularly HP Enterprise. It was a liminal moment for me. Let me say, I went back to my room that night and I thought a lot about it, and of course, all the other
liminal. You only normally hear that in William Gibson novels, so that's fantastic.
I'm a big fan of William Gibson, so if I lifted up from him, I'm proud to have done that. And that was very informative for our strategy. So when we look at our public cloud, we look at it as a component of something we would bring into the picture with a customer to say, here are all the things in our portfolio we can do for you. Now, if they say we need extreme scale, we need to stream the World Cup to millions of simultaneous users, that's really not the business we're in. That's not, our enterprise customers aren't asking us for that. And in that case, I would say, hey, listen, that's probably a great use case for like an Amazon or an Azure, like a public cloud. But it turns out it's not actually what most of our enterprise customers are asking us for. So that's the exciting stuff, like certainly Netflix and all these large-scale public cloud companies that get a lot of the attention. It's exciting, but exciting doesn't mean that's what people are buying. That's the reality check that's just hard to land in a headline.
Can you say, and Steve, we both got our hands in front of our mouths? Like, I'm not sure we agree with you, but really? I mean, people are buying that stuff.
No, I'm not saying people are not buying it. What I'm saying is for the breadth of what we're trying to address for customers, it is only part of what we're doing. So,
but why not have a partnership then for the people that do want to do the bursty stuff? Given that you need to be able to solve.
Well, the APIs work with AWS, right?
So we have with Eucalyptus, we have an on-premise AWS compatibility story, right? Where we can say your apps and workloads can run on-premise. And there's really kind of two use cases for that: people bringing their apps back from AWS for whatever reason, and there are lots of reasons, I can take you through them, or if they're trying to design in the future for AWS. They want to design internally first and eventually move to AWS. But what our customers are saying to us is, when we say hybrid, the overloaded word hybrid, they've been hybrid for years, right? Their environment is hybrid. We just threw hybrid in front of cloud because it sounded good. But they've been running data centers all over the world, some managed by them, some managed by third parties. They don't even know where half their data centers are at sometimes, right? And so when they think about a cloud, that could be, if it's available through an API, a command line, and a browser, and it has the economics and speed in terms of being able to provision quickly that they want, to them it doesn't matter if it's called public or private or managed. And I've had this conversation all week long with customers. If I can get, literally, this is the quote, command line, browser, and API, you can hit my economics, get in the ballpark of the economics I need, and get it at the speed I need, it doesn't matter to me the words that you use in front of that word cloud.
Well, what matters most are the services that they can leverage, don't you think? I mean, and so the developer can manage all kinds of services on AWS, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can manage some of those services with Cloud System 9. I mean, there's updates that are required for Cloud System 9 to really be able to fully encompass what AWS offers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the services, I think, are one part, certainly of the AWS value proposition, in the sense that I'm sort of on the record as saying that I think a lot of people who go in there aren't coming out.
Did you say I'm sort of on the record?
No, I'm trying to remember if I
Sounds
actually
like you're
wrote that
hedging it,
down.
dude.
No, I'm not trying to hedge. I'm on the record now.
Okay, you're on the record. Okay.
A lot of people who are going to go in there are not going to come out, because they're going to go in for compute or storage, from S3, and they're going to say, oh, you know what?
I really like DynamoDB.
I have to stream this stuff, and you know what? I'll just start using Kinesis, and so on. So the services are one part of it, but the sort of secondary part that a lot of people don't talk about, and we've already seen this play out, sort of over and over and over in different sort of environments. Windows being sort of the canonical example, is the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. By getting out to market so quickly and so far ahead of everybody else, the ecosystem around AWS and AWS tooling is difficult to compete with. Right? In other words, you have random little sort of Linux distributions, and every single one of them has a CLI, some sort of CLI library, for manipulating AWS images remotely. And that's going to be one of the interesting things, I think, for the type of customer that you're talking about. Do they care about that? No, they don't. That doesn't make a difference. Do they care about the fact that lots and lots and lots and lots of their software partners are going to be running and certified, and in many cases, sort of existing in pre-image builds on the service? They will care about that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see sort of for folks that yourselves and certainly other folks in the market. Rackspace is taking the same position, which is we're not going to compete there. That's fine, but in other words, it's not a matter of sort of apples to apples from a workload perspective. There are a lot of attendant variables that go into which platform you choose and why.
Yeah, no, we think to kind of answer your question too is from a automation, orchestration, management point of view. To like today in our cloud system product, you can manage an AWS app with a free tier Java app sitting right next to it. I mean, that's what our tools do in cloud. That's why Cloud System ships with automation tools and management tools. So we believe there's opportunity for us in the multi-cloud management for sure, and services. So we have a lot of customers that will say, I may have a bunch of workloads in a public cloud. I want you to manage those for me. And I also want you to manage my outsourced IT stuff that you have, and go ahead and manage my Workday instances too. We have lots of customers do that. That's actually very premium offerings that we sell. Those are things that have high value and good margin for us. So if you call that partnership, certainly that's partnership. We have tools today, we have services today that can manage with those providers. I think your ecosystem point is spot on, because really the question is, and this is a belief thing, right? It's more belief than it is. There's no fact here yet, which is when does that ecosystem? A lot of people would argue is AWS what Microsoft was in the 90s, right? Where it's this point where the ecosystem becomes
self-reinforcing.
Yeah, self-reinforcing, right? And it creates that powerful flywheel, right? And is it there yet? And you can argue that. And I would certainly say of any of the public cloud providers that even have that debate on, I think AWS is the only one really that I'd have that debate with right now, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, I think they're very near that point. The other argument is our enterprise is going to look at the lowest common denominator because they are very nervous about the proprietariness of the public cloud play, right? And certainly all the public cloud providers have, there's nothing wring with this. I mean, I certainly did this at Microsoft, right? You have a set of things that are very attractive to the platform. This is basic platform economics, right? Things are attractive to the platform, and then you have things that are very, very sticky to make it hard to leave that platform. I'm not revealing anything terribly secret here. So that exists and is existing more and more in the public cloud. So those services that roll out in all these public cloud providers, take a crisp lens on those. Try to look at how many of those are going to be portable outside of that environment. Now you may say as a customer, I don't give a crap about it because it's so good that I'm okay living with it.
Happens every tech wave.
Happens every tech wave.
We always...
Yep. Apple's a good example, right? There's a lot of different examples of this where you hit that point where maybe it's good enough, I'm okay staying in that environment. But when it comes to enterprise IT, this is it's a little bit different than the consumer phenomenon, right? You have to say, okay, will it really happen in mass to enterprise IT, or will it happen in very specific workloads? So the customers I talk to really do look at this carefully. They say, I'm going to put things in there that I know that in that public cloud context, or even a private cloud, that I am going to have some way to leverage or hedge. So I may make an OpenStack and a VMware play. And not because I want to have to, but I want leverage. So when the VMware guy comes in, I show him the OpenStack Summit shirt that I just picked up in Vancouver. When the HP guys come in, I talk about the VMware license renewals that I'm in the middle of. I mean, this is it's smart. Like I would do this if I were CIO, right?
The end all up.
Yeah, and so the same thing is happening kind of now between the public cloud providers, where they want it to be very sticky as possible, but at the same time, enterprises are saying, I want lowest common denominator, so I want to be able, and this is where eucalyptus for us fits in really well.
So why wouldn't you guys push for the public cloud providers to try to create some environment so you can make it not so sticky, so you can make it a little bit easier?
Welcome to our SOA conversation that we just had.
Exactly.
Because then we're going to have to employ some director.
And we're starting to see these inklings of these kinds of conversations. For instance, around now that Docker has gained such leverage, now we're starting to see this effort for a standardized container environment. Right?
So the in my opinion, the only thing that is even slightly portable between any cloud environment today is a virtual machine. That's about it. Now, there's a promise that containers would provide even more of that in the future, that you'd have more of that interoperability with containers. It's still being proven. I wouldn't say that's yet. But I think if you have one of the major hypervisors supported, which all the cloud guys do in some way, we do, all the other guys do, you could typically move a VM around.
Does Cloud Foundry need to standardize on a container?
So yeah, Cloud Foundry is going to continue to. It's done a set of things to make interoperability very strong. Like you have Cloud Foundry running on Azure, it was just announced a couple days ago. Certainly runs on AWS and OpenStack and VMware and a variety of things. But at the container level, there's a lot of work going on to make sure that there's a strong container story with Cloud Foundry over time. But I mean, the momentum, I got asked this earlier, the momentum of Cloud Foundry is pretty phenomenal. And a year ago, I don't think anyone would have guessed how far and how quickly it's advanced in terms of its penetration. I'll tell you an interesting story. I was asked by someone to look back a year and say, what were things that you believed a year ago that have proven true or not come true? And so a year ago, I had a hypothesis that seems fairly logical, which is if a customer bought infrastructure from HP yesterday, physical infrastructure, it's logical to presume they might buy infrastructure as a service from HP tomorrow. That seems like a logical argument, right? A year later, 9 out of 10 conversations that I have had with enterprise customers has been about PaaS. PaaS as a metaphor for the application tier, right? With infrastructure as a service being interesting and required and probably something they're going to buy for their environment, but not the locus of the debate, right? And that I wouldn't have presumed a year ago. And I think a lot of that is, I think customers are starting to say, I need to have a layer of interoperability higher up the stack than just having something like a VM or just having infrastructure service. I want it at a higher level. It's certainly true of large financial services, telcos, and manufacturing. They're looking very hard.
You got hedging baked in to a point.
Yeah,
and
that's true. That's
providers that can do that.
Yeah, but I think the important thing is that I think whatever kind of customer we talk about, right? Whether it's the sort of traditional customer, the sort of large workloads, or the sort of guys that are sort of more on the forefront, they have decisions to make, right? In terms of how and where they move forward, right? So in other words, if you're sort of currently on a sort of older middleware, classic middleware style solution, is that your play moving forward? For how long?
Yeah.
Do you move? If so, what do you move to? And then sort of even on the modern front, right? You have people looking at it and saying, all right, I have containers, so I have platforms. I have container sort of orchestration, scheduling solutions. I have fabrics like these. I have all these different pieces. How do I fit these together? Do I need them all? Do I need them, more than one of them? Do I need just one?
Yeah.
And so on. So it doesn't surprise me. This is the short way of putting it, that a lot of the folks that you're talking to are curious about the application tier, because from my perspective, it's where the most questions are.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, like if you're talking infrastructure, it's basically you're going to go public or you're going to go private. On the private side, you're probably going to go one of two ways. You're probably going to go something OpenStack or VMware. From the application standpoint, however, Cloud Foundry's certainly done a remarkable job from a momentum standpoint, but there are a lot of moving pieces there, and how those fit together is really, really confusing to a lot of people.
What are some of the moving pieces?
Well, things we've already talked about, right? So in other words, we talked about Docker, right? Where does Docker fit in?
Right.
In other words, do I drop it in containers? Is that good enough? Probably not. How does that fit into sort of my application strategy? Do I go Cloud Foundry? If I go Cloud Foundry, how does that impact the container play?
And then you got other hedging, Microsoft Hyper-V containers. Linux is not just going to sit
Ubuntu
still.
and has its own.
It's just there are a lot of different pieces, and worse, pieces keep emerging, right? So in other words, it's like, okay, we have containers. Okay, great. We all sort of digest that. Then Kubernetes comes along. Okay, great. Something to sort of orchestrate containers. Okay, fine. And then Mesos comes along, something to essentially establish a machine fabric. And it's like, whoa, stop. Like, how do I?
Well, this is the next golden age of the services empire, isn't it? I mean, we're being able to learn how to stitch all these things together.
It's golden if you don't believe in the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice, basically states pretty succinctly that the more choice, we tend to think of choice as a sort of unmitigated good. On some level, it is, because you don't want to only have one choice, because then you're basically beholden to the tech or the price and whatever. But at the same time, somebody comes to you and says
packaging. It's whoever packages it all at best is going to win.
But in other words, what do you choose? Like, who packages what?
No, I had a meeting with big telco. One group, literally same group, same people in the meeting. One group is building literally just IaaS, OpenStack based stuff. Next group is building with an internal PaaS that they're building their own version of Cloud Foundry. Another group said, well, so what do you think? I'm doing CoreOS plus containers and Kubernetes. I'm like, well, just so you realize, like, some of this stuff is like 6 months old. Like, you know that, right? Like, just
you could get something fresher
before you get I was trying to tease them, like, I was just joking, right? Check your latest, Twitter stream, because something else just came out. But these lightweight architectures, that's the only way I can categorize them. All this stuff that's happening so fast. It's terribly confusing for particularly enterprise customers, because they're like, I don't understand. Should I take the container jump? Should I do containers and VMs, which is something I see very commonly today? What's the value of going to containers if they're still running a VM? Like, it is really confusing for customers right now. So I think there's a lot of questions still for certain technologies like Cloud Foundry to have to be sorted out. In our Helion development platform, we instantiate apps as a Docker container inside our dev platform. But it is going to be, I think the next year here is going to be really interesting as some of this fruit falls. Like, I keep looking at it as like there's all this different fruit. And I was describing this as different fruit to a customer, and he's like, "Listen, I didn't come here for a smoothie. Like, I actually just needed the apple and the banana. I don't want all this stuff blended up together, because then I don't know what the hell I had inside. Right? It's kind of red and has seeds in it. So it's going to be giving advice to customers in this area, particularly conservative enterprises, is
also
really
having a strong opinion, taking some of the choice out of their hands.
That's
what
right.
we're talking about, the tyranny of choice. But that's why we, every wave, anoint a winner.
Yep.
And we're willing to deal with the fact that we're locked into Oracle, or we're locked into HP UX, or we're locked into whatever we're locked into.
So who are some of the? So is it Google going to win? I mean, as the lock-in king?
With anybody's going to lock everybody in right now, it's going to be.
Or is it Amazon? Amazon's
way out in front.
Yeah.
From a data gravity perspective, to Steve's point.
Well, data gravity, but like I said, I mean, it's
just the services they have.
The services are killer.
Yeah.
The services, and it's not. It's one of those things. Like, so many times you see, that the sort of new tech wave come in and they establish sort of a platform, and they're like, they start to see adoption. Like, hey, great, that's awesome. And then they hang out and they just sort of print money, and it's sort of great. The folks from Amazon dropped like 500 features last year. I think more, 500 plus. So if anybody's going to go the lock-in route, it's definitely going to be an Amazon.
But I think that what the enterprises are seeing, so enterprise cloud adoption is like very, very low relative to other areas like startups, for example.
Yeah.
So what enterprises are seeing, they're seeing that momentum and that innovation for sure in AWS, but they're really starting to take a fine-tooth comb to say how much of that, where do I get that lock-in, and am I okay living with that level of lock-in?
Here's the problem, though, right? So in other words, Amazon better than anybody who's ever preceded it, has made it so available and so convenient that half the time by the time the enterprises figure that out, it's too late. They wake up,
true.
It's very much like, how did Linux get to where it is?
Yeah.
Right? It didn't get to where it is because of analysts or CIOs or anybody else. At one point, CIOs woke up and were like, what the hell is running my infrastructure?
That's right.
Like, I need to pay somebody
All
for
my
support.
DNS servers are running Linux. And
that's the thing, is that Amazon's even more convenient than Linux in the sense that it's available, certainly to get started at a very, very low cost. But more importantly, they don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I heard one story about a guy who worked at a bank, and the IT group decided to really to really put their fist down. And they said, "What's this AWS thing?" They turned it off, and suddenly the lights went.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of scroll right there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not an economist, and one needs to be careful of buying into FUD positions, but I'm definitely. There is a lot of froth in the economy, and there is money sploshing around in some spaces, but we are due a pretty savage downturn. And I know it's all like, oh, we're coming out of the great. Come on, we were just priming the pumps, qualitative easing, make it easy, lower interest rates. There will be a reckoning, and when that happens, the street is going to ask some tougher questions about getting paid, and I think that there could be some interesting reckoning if that kicks in. Like even if that part of Amazon's business is as profitable as we now know it is, that's actually made other parts of Amazon business look less good. And I do if what we're talking about is the brute force of economics, I think that there may be some external factors that have an influence on how this plays out.
I think you got me thinking about the zombie apocalypse a little bit there at the reckoning. You got me a little scared, James. But when there's, one lens to look at is we spend so much time, thinking about the cloud in a U.S. context. We really do. And
wait, there's something else?
I know. It's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? I know. When I look at initiatives like the things that are happening with Cloud 28 in the European Union, and how these federation concepts of multiple geo-specific public cloud providers are coming together and building these, I think that's already happening. What you're saying in certain parts of the world, where there's a driver for not just locality of building a cloud-based business, but the economic gravity is so different in other parts of the world than we're dealing with right now in the U.S. that some of these like just take bandwidth, like some of these concepts of bandwidth are like massively different when you pop into Singapore and Hong Kong. That becomes the issue that you're talking about. Like I don't ever have a bandwidth cost conversation with customers in New York, right? We never talk about that. We're talking about licensing cost or whatever it may be, or AWS features, right, or OpenStack momentum or something else. So I do think that's happening in other areas. We have a large amount of HP revenue flows outside of the U.S. And actually a large amount of our momentum right now with Helion is outside of the U.S. A lot of it's in Europe.
Well, again, the EU is pretty good at slowing down tech businesses, right? That are establishing dominant positions. Yeah. They've done it a few times. Whether it was IBM back in the day or Microsoft. So I don't know. Dominance is one thing, but everything good comes to an end. There is no limitless awesome. Wow, this is I'm in a real cheerful mood right here.
Well, on that note,
should we talk about let's talk about climate change, Alex?
I'll be crawling into my bunker.
Yeah, no, we'll all be fine. It'll be good. Unfettered beauty and fantasticness forever in the cloud.
There's lots of hotels here in Vegas. We can just hang out.
It'll be fine.
I think we'll end it on that note. But thank you very much, Bill, for taking the time.
Oh, it was fun.
Actually,
Yeah, thanks
actually
for
a really
both.
good conversation. Helped me
enjoyed it.
understand a little bit more about planes and stuff.
Cool.
James Governor and Stephen O'Grady of RedMonk, thank you guys very much. And,
pleasure.
Back soon. Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks.
That's it for this week's show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pretty good. Well, we did a podcast. How about that?
Oh, wow.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, HP Helion and the HP Helion Developer Network. The HP Helion Developer Platform is based on Cloud Foundry, the open source platform as a service. It's integrated with HP Helion OpenStack. The HP Helion Development Platform is an open, interoperable, polyglot platform that supports enhanced application development and portability across traditional, private, and public clouds. That's hphelion.com. Audio editing and sound design for the new Stack Analysts podcast is provided by Broken Hours. You can find them at brokenhours.com. Thanks again, and hope to see you back at the show. Bye-bye.